Okay, hi. Welcome back to the channel. I have had my Apple Watch now for about 2.5, nearly 3 weeks since receiving it, a week after I expected it to arrive thanks to the delayed ordering process. And now having had it for that amount of time, I thought it was worth maybe just doing a quick run through of the 5 things I love about the watch and the 5 things I don't love quite so much. So let's have a look at those 5 things and let's see what you think. Okay, so the first thing that I don't really like too much about the watch is the notification and the notification principle. And when you consider this is one of the primary focuses of the watch, and this is what Apple said was going to remove the the need to pull your phone out all the time, I just find the notification functionality is not as good as it should be. I mean, first of all, there's the Taptic engine itself. It's not very strong, and if you're a bit sort of thick-wristed, like I think I probably am, then I quite often miss the little tap that you're supposed to get when you get a notification. And I've turned them right up to max. I've got the Taptic on max, and I've also got, there's an option in there to add a little bit extra Taptics for common notifications. And really, I still find myself missing maybe a quarter, sometimes up to half of the notifications. The other one is the notifications themselves. So when you get the notifications, what happens is they come into the top area of the watch, so the notifications area here. And if you get a single notification and you raise the watch and look at it, all well and good, and then you put the watch back down and it just disappears. Over time, if you're doing that fairly often, you end up with as you can see here, a fairly long list of notifications. I've got 3 there, but sometimes it can go up to half a dozen. It depends on what you do with them. Once you've got more than one notification, the only thing you can do is basically swipe them to the right and clear them. And you have to do that for every single notification you've got, which is an absolute pain, as you can imagine, when you've got many of them. And then sometimes when you get the notifications, the notification comes through and you swipe to dismiss it. And then sometimes you can't swipe it to dismiss it. You've got to slide it to that side to dismiss it. It just isn't... it isn't consistent with its user interface. And I think I mentioned in one of the first reviews I did that, even the look and feel, let me just get rid of all of these, even the look and feel of, the notifications part, the font that's there compared to the font of the glances, it's just not consistent. It really does feel like it's 2 separate teams to me. So first one is notifications and the Taptic engine. So secondly, I'm going to talk about the button location as the second thing I don't really like. I'll take the watch off this, and you can see we have the 2 main buttons on this side. And you can also see I've actually moved them to the left-hand side of the watch, and I wear my watch on my left wrist. And I'll explain why in a second. You have the 2 buttons here. This one is your scroll wheel, which by the way can be a bit sticky sometimes if you haven't used it for a few hours. And then it loosens off fairly quickly. But you have the scroll wheel here, and then you have the button, as it's called, the button here, which pulls up Apple Pay if you have Apple Pay in your country, but also your frequently used contacts. Now the problem I find with it on this side of the watch, which is where you would normally have them when you're wearing them, is twofold. So one is, I don't wear my watch up here. Wearing a watch right up your wrist just looks a bit stupid. So I like to wear my watch nice and low down on the wrist, like so. And with it there, your hand is always touching the buttons. And what you find happens fairly often is either you will accidentally switch on Siri, and so you'll get a little Siri thing going, here I am, what do you want me to do? Which can be a bit annoying. But even worse is when you press these 2 buttons together, you get a snapshot of what's on the screen at the time. And so usually I'll see my pictures on my phone towards the middle or the end of the day, and I've got like half a dozen snapshots of watch faces because through the day my wrist has touched the 2 buttons and caused it to be a snapshot. And then finally, if you touch them for too long, the watch actually powers down. And a couple of times the watch itself has powered down. So what I've ended up doing is resorting to moving it to the other side, which gets away with a problem, but it does mean the buttons are not in such an ideal location as they would be here for operation of the watch. And so the button location, I mean, it's not so much the location per se, it's how it how they work if it's on your wrist here. It's just not ideal. So the second thing I don't really like is the button location, or the way the buttons are functioning in the location that you prefer to have them. So the third thing is the rubber band feeling, and I'll explain that now, what that actually means. When you're using this button here, the button on the side, if you use it with the watch face off, it's basically just a freewheeling wheel. I mean, it freewheels, there's nothing amazing going on, and you can feel it freewheeling. And if you look at the mechanism, it's a very simple pin that goes through. It goes through a couple of sensors, and the sensors will feel it rotating and give you feedback on that. Now, what happens when you're using certain interfaces is the interfaces will bounce up and down. I'll give you an example on the screen of people. So if I'm moving the people and you're moving them left and right, there's a sort of bounce that goes on. Okay, you can see that sort of bounce that happens, and that bounce, I don't know whether it's psychological or it sort of transposes itself to the wheel. And it can feel a bit strange the way that this bounce happens, and you can end up either moving the wheel too far or moving it not far enough, and having to sort of rotate it backwards and forwards through it. And so actually I'm finding at the moment that I barely use the scroll wheel at all. I'm finding it much easier to just either move around on the interface and just choose the item directly, like so. Or just not use it, just to use your finger to scroll up and down the screen instead of using the wheel. Now, some of that might be because it's on the left-hand side because of the previous issue, but it has this weird rubber band feeling, which they've obviously built into the way that the interface works, but it just does feel a bit strange. So the third thing on my list is this rubber band feeling you get on the button when you're using it, the scroll wheel. Okay, number 4 on the list of dislikes is the user experience itself. It really does feel, and I mentioned earlier about the notifications versus the glances, but it does really feel like it's 3 different UXs all rolled into one. You have the UX, which is your notifications. You have the UX, which is your apps here and how that works. And then you have the other UX, which is, if we go back to the screen here, which is your glances. Now, I'll mention glances a little later, but glances by far is the most Apple-like experience, followed by the apps being fairly Apple-like, although a lot of people have complained about how that scrolls. And then finally, some of the way the apps work, but notifications in general, it's just not a consistent user experience between those 3 different areas of the main functions of the watch. And so I'm finding really that the user experience is a little bit, disconnected at the moment, and I'm really hoping that that's going to get fixed with some of the future updates. So number 4 on the list is user experience. Okay, so the 5th and final dislike about the watch itself, it's quite a biggie, and it's the actual watch itself, which is a large part of the functionality of an item that you'd wear on your wrist. And the reality is, it's in some ways it's quite a lousy watch, and I'll explain why. So, typically if I'm wearing one of my other watches, it's on my wrist, a quick glance down, see the time, and that's it, I know what time it is. Super simple. And that's just not really how this watch works. In order to see the time, you've either got to touch the phase, which will work 80% of the time, but sometimes you'll double touch it to get the time to come up. Or you've got to make this exaggerated movement like this in order for the phase to come on. Just quickly glancing at the watch, it just doesn't work. And so sometimes you will move to look at the watch, as I did there, doesn't come on, and you end up having to make an exaggerated movement in order for the watch face to come on. And I would have much preferred a sort of a background mode, very light mode that showed the watch face in low power mode, so I could just quickly glance at the watch and see what the time was. So that, for me, that's quite a big issue, and just glancing at the watch and trying to get the time, it can be quite difficult. And then, coupled with that problem is really the time it takes for the screen to come up. So the time it takes itself is not an issue. Okay, it comes up fairly quickly, as you can see. But when you look at a watch face, there's a certain amount of processing that's required. And so if you're looking at a watch normally, you'll sort of look down, you'll see the time, bit of processing can happen, 1 or 2 seconds later, okay, I've got the time. Okay, it really does feel a bit like that. But when you're doing this with the watch, and you have to go like this, then the watch face comes up, and then you do the processing. It feels like it's taking an extra step to actually just work out what the time is. And I think, I've played around with a number of the faces. You can see I've gone to this simple one with the numbers on to try and really help me. And in fact, probably the best one is for times completely is the extra large face here. That's really good because it's super simple. You can turn it, see the time, and it's finished. And there's not a huge amount of processing involved. But on this screen, you don't have any widgets. So if you want to see, like I've got on my simple face, sorry, the utility face I'm using. I like to see the time in Tokyo because I work a lot with my Japanese colleagues. I like to see the battery. I like to see the temperature outside and the time and the date. And you don't get any of that with the extra large face. So, the fifth and final one, and as I say, it's quite a biggie. Hopefully some of the future software will solve this as well. It's just not a great watch. And it can, as a watch experience, and I have many watches, it's probably one of the worst I've had. So, fifth and final thing I don't like is the watch itself. Okay, so we talked about the 5 things I don't like. So let's start getting a bit positive now. Let's look at the things I do really think this watch is a game changer for, and what I have really enjoyed using it. And the first one is actually the health and fitness aspect of it. Coupled with the heart rate monitor and the 2 ways that you do health and fitness, it works really well, and it helps to gamify the experience. It really helps to show you that you're getting up, that you're moving, that you're motivating yourself. The stand-up alerts every hour or so to give you your number of stands per day work well, as does the weekly summary of your exercise. And so really there's the 2 main things you have there. You have this, this exercise ring, and as you can see, I haven't done too much today. It's a working in the office day today. So a little bit of movement, lots of standing up and down to make cups of tea, and hardly any exercise, which I promise I will rectify later. But you can see, it's really easy to gamify. It's really easy to understand it, and then you can click on it through the glances and have a look at your individual aspects and how your day is going, and that works really well. And then coupled alongside that, if I go into the apps, is the fitness tracker or the workout. And again, this works really well. If you go into the gym, and I was in the gym when I was away last week doing some rowing. I did some indoor cycling. I did some bench work and just put that down under the other category. And it worked really well. It's a really, really great way of measuring your fitness and your tracking. I've done some outdoor cycling on it as well. And it's very comparable to the Fuel Band I used to have. And I used a proper tracking app for cycling, and the calories and distance were almost identical. So this will, you can say the Apple Watch is quite expensive, but to be honest, it does replace a lot of expensive fitness tracking devices with a lot of really good functionality. And so those 2 aspects of the watch are really good, and one of the most fun things I've been using the watch for so far. So health and fitness, very, very good on the watch. So here's an odd one, as a good and a bad, as I'm going to mention the Taptic Engine. When it works, it's brilliant. Okay, and I mentioned it's one of my bad things in that within notifications, you don't always feel the Taptic Engine go. And in the top of the watch, if anyone's had a look at how the watch is built, you have a little sliding mechanism in there that just sort of does a sliding bounce that gives the feeling of your wrist being tapped. And the Taptic Engine just really works well when it works well. I've used it for navigation, and you get the little taps to tell you you need to turn left and turn right. I can't yet work out which is left and right, but I do know I need to lift up my wrist and have a look at which street to go down. And that works really well. If it's nice and quiet and you get a tap to stand up, that really works well. So the whole concept of the Taptic Engine and giving you a little nudge when you can feel it really does work very well. But I just wish it was a little bit stronger. Or you could do something within the settings to do something about that. Either make it a bit stronger, or allow it to have a bit longer, have it to repeat, and really just to feel it better. But as a concept, until they iron it out a bit, I really, really enjoy the Taptic Engine. Okay, so the next thing that I really like about the watch is the quality and feel of it. I'll take the watch off for this because you don't really need to see the UX. But the quality and feel of this watch is absolutely superb. I've got some reasonably expensive watches. I've got a Rolex, I've got an Omega, I've got an IWC, and I've got a SIN, and I've even got some sort of lower end watches. And you know, it's no exaggeration to say the quality of this strap is on par with my IWC. And when you imagine my IWC strap is £300 for a basic leather strap, and you know this strap is 130, and it's a very good quality strap, and it feels very nice on, and it's, you know, it has a really good sort of leather pattern to it. You can feel it's very high quality and robust. You know, it's just a really well made strap. And it feels expensive, but when you compare it to luxury brands, it's actually quite cheap. And I think that's where Apple have really set the bar with the watch. They've taken luxury, as you would expect on a fairly expensive watch, and made it, you know, within the sort of luxury market, affordable luxury, which is really what I think they've been going for. And I think, you know, when you look at the case, this has a ceramic back, it has a sapphire crystal top, it has the stainless steel with the hardening elements inside it. It really is, you know, an absolutely superb watch. It's a little bit thick, which you don't feel on the wrist and you don't really see on the wrist, but it you know, as a watch experience, it's absolutely superb. I mean, this case is on par very easily with my Rolex, which uses a very similar concept of a stainless steel with a hardening agent in it. I've had no issues with scratching, I've had no issues with anything else. I've seen some videos of people scratching their watches on the internet. If I take my Rolex and scratch it all over the floor, it's going to scratch. So comparing that to the Apple Watch is just plain ridiculous sometimes. But you know, hey, you got to get the view somehow. But you know, it's just a beautifully made watch from, you know, from the back, and you can see the etching inside there, which tells you what watch it is. From the way that the strap mechanism works, just by pushing the button, and the super smooth way this comes out, and the way you can just push it back in, is just, you know, sublime, and you feel a little click there. And then again, the ability to swap straps. I've got a Milanese on order, I've got a sport band on order, and you know, really super simple. I want to go to the gym, put the sport band on, you know, 1 minute later I've swapped it all, it's back on my wrist. So quality and feel, it's absolutely superb, as you would expect from Apple. So, you know, the next thing on my list of things that I really enjoy about the watch, it's the quality and feel of the materials and the look and design of the watch itself. Okay, so the fourth thing that I really like about the watch, this has been a little bit of a revelation to me, I didn't think I'd like it at all, is the mapping function. And you know, let's get it out of the way straight away. To have the maps load up for the first time, it is a little bit slow. And I think I've just recently put on the update 1.0.1, which is a very low level update, but it seems to have made things a bit quicker. But the way the maps work is just brilliant. I mean, I've used it a couple of times when I've been in London, you know, the last few weeks to navigate, and it's just worked perfectly. The only actual issue is not the maps itself, is the Apple Maps has all of the problems that we have with Apple Maps, and the reason that we all prefer to use Google Maps. So that's still there, and let's just put that to the side and leave that aside. But the mapping, the way it works, you know, so you know, if I go into the map itself, I'll remember how to do this in a second. Okay, yeah, so if I do a hard press, you know, and I want to go to a London location, I can dictate it in. These are some of the places I've been to recently. You know, and if I put in the postcode, it loads it up, and what happens from there is it acts, you know, obviously from where I am at the moment, which is back in the north of England, it's going to take me 92 hours to walk down to that location in London, or 4.5 hours to drive. Now, obviously, you can do the driving element, and it works as much the same way as your car sat-nav would. But you know, the walking one's been the one that I've used, and it works really well. You know, and you load it up, and you start, off you go, and then basically it tells you when to turn left, it tells you when to turn right. You get a little tap on the wrist. It tells you which street to look for, and I've actually actively enjoyed using it. I've enjoyed not having to stand with my phone in my face. I've enjoyed navigating around London. I've enjoyed looking around and seeing the street signs and seeing what's going on around you. And I think that's a really interesting revelation for me on this watch. The navigation and using it to navigate, it's a lot of fun. It does truly release you from your phone, and I've had a good time using it. So really great function, really recommend it. So number 5 on my list of things that I really like about this watch is the glances, and the glances are something that you get from swiping up, and it gives you all of the glances that you need for the sort of headline functions of the watch. And I did mention in a previous review I don't like the way that glances go back to the last glance you use rather than a glance home area, and I still don't like that, but I'm hoping they fix that on a future update. But you can set what glances you want. I've set my favourite, which is the connected screen. I've set the battery screen. I've set the calendar, my heart rate. I've set my exercise ring. I've set the weather, which is another great app, by the way. I've set my location, and I've set the world time. And you can basically set what you want. You can have 5, you can have 3, you can have 10. Many apps provide glances, but the glances are really good. It's a very consistent Apple experience, and I talked about UX earlier and what looks Apple and what doesn't look Apple. Glances and the activity monitor specifically are very, very Apple look and feel in the way they work. And glances are really good fun. It's good fun to use them. It's great information that you want to see on the go. This is something that Apple have really got right, this glance functionality. Notifications, I think they need to work on. Glances, I think it just needs a little bit of streamlining, but it's one of the best functions of the watch, above some of the other elements of it. So glances, really good fun, really informative, really interesting, and a great thing to use on the watch. So I hope you enjoyed that. Just looking through and seeing what I think of the watch. I still love it. I still think it's a great item. I still play with it, and I'm really hoping that some of the future updates will iron out some of the issues that a lot of people are having with the interface and the watch itself, and really start to move it forwards. So thanks for watching, and any comments as always leave them below. Thank you.